ladies and gentlemen, the star, the guest that I've been so excited for, the Nic Conroy. For everybody listening, you need to know Nic is one of the early adopters in the Inspire by Example movement, and I just want to thank you for that. I really appreciate it. When I first got the shirts made, I put on Facebook that, I'd send them out for free, anybody, and you were one of the first people to message me, and you're like, heck yeah. And it was funny because I was like, Nic wants a shirt? How cool. I was like pumped up that, that you wanted a shirt. And then I sent it to you, and, you never know, like, how it's going to, whatever. And then I have seen you wearing it on social media, and I'm like, every time I do, I'm all stoked about it. So I'm just honored, and I want to tee it up a little bit for everybody listening. I've known Nic for, I've probably known you for 10 years maybe, back in the BNI days. But you've been a guy that I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for. I've gotten the opportunity of, knowing you professionally, knowing you a little bit personally. And so that's also why I'm so excited to, dive in a little bit deeper today. But, I've paid attention to you, and I've seen these tremendous levels of success, and you come from a background that is very uncommon. And, we're going to dive into some of that stuff, but I admire so much the way that you have chosen to let life, the way that you've chosen the paths that you've taken in your life when you very easily could have taken completely other paths. And you've been crushing it. It's been so fun to see. I saw you when you were working for the local company here and how well you were doing. And then you moved back east. I forget exactly, where you did.
Yeah.
And that's one of the cool things I love about social media is we're able to stay in touch with people, from afar. And then I'm trying to remember, I bought something from you, or you bought something from me on. We were able to catch up one time in a parking lot.
Yeah. And I was sent to go pick something up from you, and I didn't even know it was going to be you. And then bam, there you are. We're trading goods in the parking lot. Facebook Marketplace.
It was so fun because that was when I got to really catch up. And it was so funny because we're sitting in the Office Depot parking lot or whatever, passing over the garbage bag or whatever we were buying.
Kids clothes.
Yeah. But that's when I was like, wow, because it was so cool to see how far you had climbed in your ladder in your corporate, your job and those things like that. And I just remember when we were leaving there thinking like, Nic is a cool guy. So anyway, I just want to tee all that up that I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so excited for the opportunity to, dive in a little deeper. I'd love to start, if you didn't mind. I think that because your background is so unique, I think it's very relevant to your story, and to how far you've come and where you've been today. Do you mind humoring me a little bit and sharing with us some of the, I'd love to hear, your story, your from especially the early days and birth and up, because I just think it's so insightful into the type of person you are, which is why I want to dive in on it a little bit.
Yeah, I like to kind of share the story because there's so many bad stories surrounding adoption and foster care, and even if we start talking about some of the work that I do in technology and cybersecurity, I like to focus on fighting human trafficking and child exploitation. And Cisco lets me kind of have some bandwidth there with some of what we do. But I was really young and ended up at Child Haven in Farmington, New Mexico, just an orphanage. And I was a sibling group of 5, so the wild time for the state of New Mexico to come and take your kids from you. I always tell people this: you got to be doing something wrong. It's not easy to get your kids taken from you.
Right.
Even especially back in those days, there wasn't all these, social media, and you could really cancel somebody. And so originally the state took us and put us in Child Haven, and there was 5 of us. And
five blood siblings of yours.
Yeah.
Got it.
5 biological siblings. And my oldest sister, Lacey, she is blind at birth and had some difficulties. So she was pretty immediately placed in a foster home. But I had this really cool opportunity where my Aunt Dee, she actually just retired from Emmanuel Baptist down in Farmington. She'd been the Baptist church secretary for probably 50 years. I don't know. Like I was, I just turned 40. And so we're talking back when I'm 3 years old.
Right.
So she had been like helping my biological father, like with laundry, and, he worked in the oil field, and like trying to help because he's left alone with these 5 kids, and he had addiction problems, right? Alcoholism and whatnot. So she found out we went to Child Haven and took all these secretaries from the Baptist church, and they all scooped us out of Child Haven. So the 5 of us basically went to 5 different families that came out of Emmanuel Baptist in Farmington.
Wow.
So I have a really unique relationship. Like I have a niece, and the lady that I call my sister is actually my foster sister. She was in high school when I was, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, growing up with her, and she took me everywhere. She's a retired police officer from Farmington down there, and we just are super close, but no blood relation. And so I had a really positive experience with foster care. I had a really positive experience even the brief time I was in Child Haven. I still like to give back to those programs. And I think that it just tells you that, like, when a community comes together, you can take something that's a really crappy situation, like 5 kids. Ultimately, I was adopted. And ironically, that Aunt Dee, who was the secretary at the Baptist church, my adoptive mother is her sister. So my youngest sister was with Aunt Dee in a foster family, and they're like, we want to adopt this kid. And state of New Mexico is like, well, you got to take a sibling group. And so my parents, who adopted me, bless their hearts, ended up with 3 of us, three of the 5. So they became instant parents. So
because I was just going to ask that about, like, if because I know you were 3, so probably right on the line of if you have, like, how much of it you actually remember, in terms of, but of course that's a big enough event that some of that long-term memory I would think is there. One of the things was curious about is how that was, like, separating from your sibling, because I would imagine that that's almost more difficult than, the initial foster care and removal from the parents. Do you remember much of that?
I do. It's odd what you remember, and it's crazy how the human brain works. I have these weird memories, like my sister Lisa, my foster sister, got married when she was 17, right out of high school. She's still married. And her boyfriend at the time, he was in high school, played high school sports. I mean, we went to all of his sports. The guy would pick me up in his Jeep, and I would be like 4, maybe 5 tops, 4 years old. And I remember the door used to fly open on that thing. I still remember that to this day as a 4-year-old, like this sketchy Jeep. And,
with the door that would randomly open?
Yeah, and his dad, like, owned a bait shop down in Farmington. I remember getting my hair cut in there. So there's these weird, like, vague memories that come back to you 25, 30 years later. And, like, and then I'll even go to my sister and be like, did this really happen? She'll like, yeah. And, but the crazy thing, too, one thing I love social media, and you brought it up, and I love documenting things, and I don't have a single picture of myself probably before 3 years. I don't have baby pictures, and so pictures to me are super important.
Yeah.
I'm that guy always out there with a selfie stick. Guys make fun of me.
That's why I get to see the shirt from time to time.
Yeah. I like to document stuff because those are memories that you just can't replicate,
right?
Other than, social media or storing them somewhere.
Because now you have, how many kids do you have?
I have 1 of my own and 2 that I, through step parenting, help raise.
Right. So, 3-ish or
3 kids that I really take accountability for.
Right. Yeah. 3 that you're raising.
Yeah.
How has, I would just be curious, knowing that background, and I just want to comment too, again, and this is one of many instances of your story that I think is so fascinating, because so many times people are faced with adversity, and it can either, harden us or soften us. It can make us better or worse. It can change our perspectives on the world. And it's one of the things I've respected about you for so long. And I failed to mention in my intro of you, which I apologize profusely that I butchered it, but you're also a veteran.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that too. But I just think it's remarkable because, so many people could grow up with animosity and resentment and, like, these negative feelings towards the family model and, whatever, just the world in general. how has that experience changed now how you approach fatherhood? And, because I get to see I get to see live a little bit vicariously through it with those selfie sticks on social media. And I love how active you are. And I mean, just recently you've been posting stuff with jujitsu and the family, and it's neat. And I'm just curious if that's been an intentional, like, if any of that's related, or
intentional is the word, right? And so, like, whether it's my experiences from adoption or war, right? The Arabic across my arms says love heals all wounds. And, like, I don't believe in time doesn't heal shit. People suppress feelings, people suppress traumas, and they don't deal with it. And I think that everybody should be intentional with everything that they do in life, in general, right? So I've always been intentional with, like, addressing things, and then when I wasn't, that's when I've had my biggest failures in my life, right? Or when I've had my biggest struggles, when I wasn't intentionally addressing a trauma or a struggle. And it's providing love. Like, I went into foster care and I was provided a scenario where I was given attention and a ton of love, and that love heals wounds. Nobody just said, oh, here, you have a family now, and just let it ride. Like, I always had resources and support and people to talk to, and if I needed counseling, it was always an option or whatever. It was never suppressed or not spoken about in our home. It was very open. So I've just kind of learned to be that way, and I think naturally I'm just an optimist. I think that I have lots of high energy, and I'm a lot of times, sometimes I feel like I can get 90% of the project done, and then the trailing after effect of the Nic hurricane is the last, like, 10%. It always takes me the longest.
No wonder I like you so much. We're exactly the same there.
I can build a building, but the final piece of trim might not be on a doorway or something.
And it never get done.
Yeah. Right, yeah, it just lingers there. But that's really, like, I think when you said that or asked the question, it's like you have to be intentional with dealing with these things, or finding outlets like jiu-jitsu, athletics, work. I mean, I love my job. That's an outlet for me. So I think it's just being intentional with your thoughts and your actions and your game plan that really helps you move past or through traumas or adversity.
Right. Tell me more about that intentionality and where that comes from, because there needs to be, I think, a reason behind the intention. Like, you've been a guy that I've gotten to watch for 10 years be very intentional, whether it's, your career pursuits or jiu-jitsu, or, I mean, even the days when, we'd stand up in BNI and ask for referrals or whatever. I've picked that up from you for forever, that there's been that intentionality. But I have to assume that there's I don't know how to explain it, but like a larger reason why, like somewhere that you're headed, or somebody that you're trying to become, or an impact that you're trying to make. Like, what's the larger drive behind all these intentional things that I see from you for the last decade? I guess, like, why the intention to be intentional?
I think it's this weird, or oddly, maybe it's natural, intrinsic feeling or desire to be great, right? And to inspire other people, or to be something that maybe I shouldn't have been. Just some, orphan in the state of New Mexico, which is, not a leading state by any indicator as far as healthcare, education, or anything.
Yeah.
Right? So, all of this adversity, the desire to be the best, the desire to be great, and I think some of it's just internal or intrinsically how God made me. Like, I was maybe in the 8th grade, I got Mr. Hustle Award at Arizona State baseball camp, right? Like, I've just always been someone who just goes. But really, I think as I've maybe turned the corner from 30 and now I just turned 40, like, setting goals and what do I want to be with my life. And I think when I don't have a goal, or if I don't put something on the calendar, like I just did a tournament this last weekend, and I feel like I have to put something on the calendar to get off the couch and go train. I was coming off of an appendix surgery after coming back from Panama doing jiu-jitsu. And I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to go put this on the calendar. And I was coming off the couch this weekend, but I think that's what I have to do. I have to have a goal or a vision or something in the sights and say that's what I'm aspiring to do. And I just want to be great, and I want to be the best at what I do, and that's just what motivates me to kind of set those paths.
Yeah. Well, and how cool that you know enough about yourself to know, like, I got to sign up for the thing, or I got to put it on the calendar, or I got to, and because that's where some, I think, discipline and intentionality collide. It's like purposeful, those small steps that will help with the bigger goal or the bigger picture later, signing up for it, put it on the calendar, like holding yourself accountable. You had talked about, though, a little bit there, like, and I never even thought about that, like using the word an orphan from New Mexico or whatever. It sounds so extreme, but it's real. It's an accurate. Do you feel like you've got something to prove? Like there's a chip on your shoulder, or is it more coming from a place of, I don't know, like you want to prove some of that stuff wrong and be the example of all that? Or
I just feel like probably like people, the American dream, right? Like people who are immigrants or people who come from nothing, there's hundreds of thousands of inspiring stories. And I think that when you come from having nothing and then you see that, I mean, if you out hustle people in this country, I am fully confident anybody who hustles and works hard and works with intention can do really great things. Like it doesn't matter what industry it is. You can start your own restaurant. You can build greatness if you set the goals. And, there's obviously steps that really help you maximize that, like finding good mentors. Mentorship has been huge in my life. I like to mentor, but I've had really phenomenal mentors, and they expedite your time to get there.
Yeah.
Tell you, like, this is what I would do. And if I've had mentors where I just blindly just listen to what they tell me to do, and I get a promotion. And I like it. They saw the vision that I couldn't see because I'd not been there before. And so I think that those things, like finding mentors, setting goals, all of that, knowing that I came from nothing, and I got to see, like, when I was adopted, I got to see my adopted father. He was a very successful person and very disciplined, and Columbia grad school graduate, right? Like sold his wind energy business to General Electric. So he was a very successful person. I got to kind of see that. But he also would talk to me growing up about the Great Depression and how his parents lived through it, and he just harping, you should have 6 months of income stored. You should have 6 months of income stored. And it just comes to me to this day. So I think it was just a really combination of this coming from foster care into a pretty really well-off situation with really good examples that I was able to formulate this like
almost like you saw
plan, yeah.
You saw what the world could be. Like you saw, I don't know, it changed your perspective of normal.
Yeah, like you go and you work hard, you educate yourself. You can see the path. Where I think of so many people, maybe just an orphan from New Mexico or an underprivileged kid in Tennessee, they can't see that. And so it just comes down to, like, even the mentor who tells me, hey, go do this project, take charge of this project. It'll put you in good light. Bam, I get a promotion. They see what I couldn't see because I hadn't been there before. And so, like, I think coming out of foster care into a better situation, then I could see what you might not be able to see as a underprivileged child. And I think that's why maybe so many kids, they want to be LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, right? All these, like, really big people, because that's what they get to see. And that's their way out of their situation. And ironically, my dad worked in tech. He was at Compaq Computers when I was through high school, and I ended up in tech. And that was my way to move forward and have this uber amount of success that I have in the industry that I'm in.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I just think that first of all, I just love it. I love that perspective, and that you've had kind of that, I don't know, that optimistic outlook to come from, from not literally nothing, and then believe, though, that it can turn there. But I also think that's fascinating when I'm hearing your story about how much trust you've had, because you even mentioned when we were off camera, when we were booking this, and one of the things I want to talk about is you made a bit of a career shift based on some advice from mentors. And there's been many times now through our conversation already where you've mentioned kind of this influence of mentors or people that, you trusted or people that you look up to. I'm fascinated with where that trust came from, or your ability to take advice. Like even that example you just gave of take on the project leads to a promotion. Because also, and so let me try to articulate this. I can also tell though that you're strong-willed. Like could flirt with maybe stubborn. I don't know. I'm not like putting words in your mouth, but I can tell that there's this like, there's that about you. Meanwhile, there's this ability to have mentors and take advice and trust, people. I'd love to understand that a little bit more of where that has come from and how you've been able to, because I just think back to, I hired my first running coach a few months ago and my running career skyrocketed.
Right.
Like, how valuable, mentorship and coaching and those things are. But, I'm learning it way later on in life. And so anyway, I'm just fascinated with where you think that came from the ability to trust people and like see that you should listen to them.
That's the first time I've actually been asked that. And that's probably something I'm going to process and be like, and kind of wonder why. Because, even when I went into the Marine Corps, at the time I was selling cars and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was trying to be a professional cyclist at the time. And, I'm slinging cars, and this guy that I was selling cars with was a retired Marine Corps recruiter. He'd done 20 years as a recruiter, basically, stuck both of his sons in the Marine Corps, and we'd sit out on this golf cart on the lot, being lot lizards, and he would just say, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, don't you want to be great? Don't you want to be the best? And he just, like, egged me on, and 2 months later, I'm in boot camp.
You're joy.
Yeah. And it was...
That's remarkable.
But that, when you said, where's this trust come from? I never thought about that. I think that I look at people and if they garner my respect, like I can spot winner, like people who are doing things in their career, people who have done things, and sometimes it's just a challenge. Like that was definitely a challenge. Like, do you want to go do great? What are you doing pissing your life away on a car lot at 19, 20 years old? And I'm like, you're right, I don't know. And so let's go do something. And
I wonder if it's because maybe, I don't know, like that you knew you were headed somewhere and didn't know where, but you also, I would assume, have had discretion on who you haven't just blindly listened to everybody.
No, there's a lot of people in the world, you look at them and you're like, yeah, you're not great, right? I wouldn't
smile, shake hands,
but
there's what we were going to do anyway.
I think I've always had maybe an innate, like, natural ability to look at someone and see characteristics that I've always felt like I've had natural leadership characteristics, and I can look at someone and say, this guy has what it takes, or this is someone I want to follow. And Jim DeBell, he was the guy who put me in the Marine Corps. Guys at work, like my first manager who hired me in Cisco, it was a 30-minute conversation. He was like, when can you be in North Carolina? And I was underqualified for that role. I look back at it now, I was underqualified, but I was highly driven and motivated, and I think he could tell I was just going to do what it took to pick up what I needed to do. So I think I can spot people. I think it's why you and I connect and vibe. Like I said, I connect with people who do hard stuff, who want to put in the cycles, and kind of the thing I always tell myself going into like a job interview and stuff like that. There's plenty of people who can outwork me and do better than me. There are very few that will.
Yeah,
and that's just who I am intrinsically. I will, if that guy's twice as good as me, I will work twice as hard until I'm better. Not because I'm spiteful, but because I'm aspiring to be better every day.
I relate to that so much. Like the one thing nobody can take from me is my work ethic.
Right.
Like you want to talk about a guy that is mediocre in terms of talent and genetics and, I'm
the same way. Yeah.
But I'm gonna work hard enough and I joke that it's my superpower is just I won't quit. Just the consistency in that showing up. But I love, and I just think it's probably worth both of us like unpacking or considering how impactful mentors have been on your life. And I do think that your ability to have discretion of who you've listened to is valuable. Someday we, should fully figure that out because it set you down, and I'm making some assumptions, but like your military path, for example, I'm going to call it non-traditional. You were already an adult. I think you had maybe even already done some college.
Yeah, I'd
maybe
come
all
to
of college.
Fort Lewis and done a few too many probably keg stands and mountain bike trails. And I was skiing and biking.
But, usually people go high school, military, let that pay for school, career, whatever. You went high school, college, professional job, military.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, that's unique. And listening to that mentor, I mean, that was a fork in the road.
Yeah, I think some of it, in my younger days, was blind luck and blessings, right?
Sure.
Like, some guys challenging me, says, look, you kind of don't know what you're doing. I can guarantee you, you're going to do something great if you go into the Marine Corps. And I believe them. And to this day, I would tell any kid who's kind of just like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'd be like, go get a certification in welding or cybersecurity or something, or go to the military. You can't go wrong. Like, I went in 2004 and we were at war. And I know it scared the crap out of my parents and whatever, but I think it was blind luck at first, just follow somebody that I respected. But then now that I'm in a place in my career, I'm picking people and placing myself intentionally around those people because I see the value in mentorship. So whether it's jiu-jitsu, there's certain people I'll follow a guy, Sanjay Cabero, all over the country to do a seminar with him, not just for the jiu-jitsu, but for the experience and the leadership and the mentorship around lots of, I changed my diet talking to this guy, right? And so now I'm intentional. Like, for my health and wellness, I follow these people. And for at work, there's plenty of people. I've risen to the fairly high ranks in what I do in Cisco and cybersecurity, and so there's certain people I'm like, I'm going to follow what that guy does, and then these guys I just kind of ignore, right? And I've always said this, one person's chaos is another person's pleasure, right? Like, so I'd like to pick up, the way this person maybe does their calendar and the way this person maybe hosts a certain conversation, and you build your own program by all these different various mentors. And now I think I'm at a point where I'm trusting the mentors because I've intentionally picked them for a certain season.
Yeah, now you've evolved and grown to the point now where it's there's way more, it's thought through and intentional, and you're a mentor yourself now, right? I mean, the cycle has continued, but I just think I think that's so fascinating, and I love that approach that you have. I also am very intentional about the type of content that I consume. I've told people forever, we don't need to use social media less. We need to use it more intentionally, because depending on what you let into your life, it will, even just, I've said it before on this podcast, even algorithmically, if we start to consume crap, we're going to get more crap. But if we intentionally consume people that inspire us and motivate us and make us better and, all of these things, like I love to follow people that are good with finances and building wealth and physical fitness and marketing.
Well, I recently saw you post the discipline equals freedom, right, on something you were doing, and that's a Jocko thing, right? And that's how I got into jiu-jitsu. I was at a time in my life, I moved back from North Carolina after COVID, worked from home, and Jocko Willink, Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, they're all black belts. And I'm sitting here like, okay, these guys that are military driven, motivated, intentional with what they do in their life and discipline, they all do jiu-jitsu.
There must be something to it.
Yeah. So I walked in the gym.
So, which I love. And that's what I love about you, because you can see that and go, well, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. Like, that's enough for me. I'm showing up. And then, years later, here you are. I'm curious, because there's definitely always, at least I would assume, you've always had this sort of, I'm going to call it a growth mentality of, being the best version of yourself. Even to go from, foster care in New Mexico to selling cars, even that is a success story, arguably, that part of your journey. I think a lot of people, their time in the military instills some of these core character traits in people, whether it's the work ethic or the discipline, the desire to do difficult things, teamwork, these things that have happened. As it relates to your story, and when you kind of have a moment to reflect back, do you think that your time in the military was formative in terms of your character development, or has that stuff always kind of been there and the military was just part of that journey?
The character development, like just enjoying doing hard things. You know, they talk about like the Miracle on Ice, right? They take a bunch of college kids and they all hated their coach, basically. The coach was really hard on them. So they win the Winter Olympics in hockey, right? And the Marine Corps is very much like that. You have a drill instructor, you have, it's the worst job in the world. But you're just surrounded by some of the greatest people in the world. You're all getting adversity intentionally shoved in your face, whether it's a really long hike or, cleaning toilets with toothbrushes till 4 a.m. because somebody didn't shave that day, right? Like it's a very interesting, especially the Marine Corps, like a very unique environment. And I think it brought me to this realization that you're better together, right? Like just having a tribe. And I think that's really why our people struggle to transition out of the military. I mean, you sit, shower, shave, travel, do everything with the same group of guys, and then you go home and you're
by yourself,
alone, and you don't have a tribe, and you don't have those mentors. And the military has a culture of promotion, right? You have grades and ranks, and it's clearly defined how you get to those next ranks. And you move out into the corporate world, and those aren't always clearly defined. It's like there's not necessarily a roadmap where there is in the military. But I think that structure helps people get out of the military, out of the Marine Corps, and know, hey, I need to figure out what I need to do to make the next step. And then you start to map it out for yourself. So I think that helped me organize the chaos that was probably my life at the time and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I was really successful when I was in the Marine Corps as well. I was meritoriously promoted, top of my class in my school, stuff like that. I just was naturally able to get promoted pretty quickly. But I think it helped me organize that. How do I build a roadmap for my life? And it really comes down to goals, or just what's my vision? Where am I headed?
Yeah. So I had Dr. Doug Miller on a while back. I just had him on last week. We talked about parenting. It's a great one. But before that, I had him on and we talked about intentional departures from the comfort zone. And one of the things he taught me was that if we align our lives with our values and then we pursue that, and that's what we measure as success for us. So not money, not the car, not the title, whatever. If we're considering success the fact that our life is aligned with our values, that's where true happiness and fulfillment can come from. And I loved it that he mentioned that, and it sounds like a lot of you learned that, there are these structure things, there are these goals, there are these things that are important to you that if you align your life that way, it brings you some level of fulfillment and, satisfaction or like, the job well done idea.
Yeah, and I really think a lot of the theme of what we've talked about is life is about the people that are around you. Like you just, you could be an isolationist and have some degree of success, but in my life or in the average person, I just don't think the average person can do it alone.
Yeah.
And whether it was adoption, whether it was going to the military and having your group of guys, moving out into the corporate world, having my tribe. I have folks at work that I have a really solid relationship with.
That's it. Yeah, I was just going to say that's an interesting recurring theme in your life story is community.
Yeah.
Which is somewhat surprising to me, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you talked about when you were as adoption in the church rallying and that's probably where the mentorship stuff comes in.
For sure. I don't believe that blood or biology creates brotherhood or sisterhood, right? Like I talk about my sister, we're not biological. I talk about guys that I served with in the military, we are brothers. I would fly across the country at the drop of a hat to help one of those guys out, and I have. Sadly, we've buried some of them, and we always fly and we get there and we take care of business, right? And there's guys that I train jiu-jitsu with that I hit a deer earlier this year and 2 a.m. it's a jiu-jitsu guy I'm calling on the phone. And so I think it's for me in my life, I'm only as successful as the people I'm around, the tribe that I have, and but not only just consuming from them, giving back, and being a leader in certain areas, being a mentor in certain areas, and then and just kind of driving the direction of the tribe as well.
Yeah, no, it's so, the power of that is so huge. I went through, I'll call it a lonely stage when I first kind of broke out and went down my entrepreneurship journey. And, you know, because a lot of changes happened to me at the same time. I started my own company. I stopped drinking. All of these things kind of come. And when I look back, a lot of where my insecurity was coming from was the lack of a tribe. And then I think, you know, I came into my own. I got more confident enough to start to build a tribe again, you know, and like who I surround myself with and those things like that. But I say all the time, I tell my team, and, you know, I use running analogies constantly, but I say, you know, if we want to go fast, go alone. But if we want to go far, we go together. Yeah. And it, you know, it carries us through. So I love that perception of community. And I guarantee that's contributed to why you've trusted the mentors and the I don't know, your coaches and kind of those life influences. Were you deployed? How much of your 4 years were you? Because you
most.
I was going to say that was like the thick of it.
In those days, it was you're gone 6 months, you're back 6 months, you're gone 6 months, you're back 6 months, and ultimately that's why I chose to get out. Like they were offering up $60,000 to re-enlist, so it was the thick of it, and I'd been in Fallujah. I mean, you're talking times of, you know, Battle of Fallujah, they're hanging guys on the bridge, right? Like all this history that took place. I mean, the Battle of Fallujah would probably be the most iconic battle in our maybe decade or our history time. But ultimately, it was like I wanted to get out and create a different life other than 6 months out, 6 months back. And, you know, if you were serving out of a wartime, there's opportunities to do schools and advance yourself,
right,
and do personal development. There was not those opportunities in the wartime. You were at war. And it was, I mean, horrific, but at the same time, it literally built me to be the person I am today. You know, when chaos is happening, I'm usually like, okay, well, no one's shooting at me, so we're good. I used to, when I first went to Cisco, I worked in a very high-stress technical support role. Like, they'd call us if the internet was down, basically. And so I was always pretty calm, cool, and collected, even though I'm a very high-energy person. That's probably when I just dial it back and said, guys, no one's shooting us. Slow down, calm down, slow, smooth, fast, right? Like, and just that probably built me into maybe the engineer, the person I am today. But definitely spent greater than half, 50% of my time overseas.
Yeah. Well, what an interesting thing to consider too about how our experiences. And I think that's going to come into one of the thing I've been excited to talk to you about, which is these intentional, difficult things, because our experiences kind of change perception of, I don't know, how challenging this actually is or how intense this actually is. I as you know, I run ultras.
Yeah.
And I love that you said hurricane or tornado Nick or whatever. When I'm done running ultras, my team here, my coworkers joke that they get Zen Ben for a few days. And depending on the distance of the ultra, it correlates to the length of Zen Ben afterwards. So everyone knows, like, if we need to ask for something or order new equipment or whatever, wait till after the ultra, ask him on Monday, because he's like, oh, it's all good, guys.
Ramped up beforehand. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I also, as you know, I volunteer on the Fort Lewis Mesa Fire Department. I'm an EMT and a firefighter there. And our chief, and no longer anymore, he's moved on, but for a long time, our captain were both veterans. And it was fascinating to see. Like, for me, a wildland fire was incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I have PTSD from some of it. Like, I've got to process that stuff. Like, for them, different intensity levels. And they would, you know, and so I loved it because I get to look to them as like these stoic, stable, you know, lighthouses when things are, it's like, if Chief Lee says this is safe, then it is. Like, because that, and so there's power, I think, in how those experiences can help prepare us for the other experiences. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's the award from injury? Is it a Purple Heart?
Yeah.
Yep. You have a Purple Heart?
Yep.
Right?
Been shot, blown up. Yep.
Do you mind? I don't know those stories. I know I knew that you had a Purple Heart, but I don't want to dig too deep. So
like I said, like I've been intentional. Love heals all wounds. I think a lot of guys come back and they don't talk, or they don't, most people who weren't there, they don't understand what these moments are like. And but there's good things to these moments as well, like sometimes inappropriate, but like the time we were blown up, I mean, probably a formative moment in my life. And you're always told complacency kills, and you're told that in the military, like, don't be complacent. And we'd been in country for a week, and we were responsible for keeping a section of roadway just outside Tacadam Air Base safe. Like, we'd have lots of Halliburton and U.S. military convoys that would go through there delivering supplies between the various bases from that airbase. So that, flying supplies from Germany or whatever, and they'd load them on trucks and take water, MREs, whatever, to these other bases, Camp Fallujah, Ramadi, whatever. And so we'd have like 13, 20 miles of road we would go out and patrol for 13 to 16 hours a day. So imagine like being a police officer and you say like, you've got Florida Road and you're out there 16 hours.
Right.
And so, we had, a handful of vehicles, 5 vehicles. And so we would do like what we would call 50-50. And so to get lunch break or dinner or whatever, we started sending 2 vehicles up on the hill, overlooking the section of roadway. And they could you'd put the machine gunner down for a nap, eat a snack, just relax for an hour or two. Because that's 16 hours, a long time to be out in what we call our patrol zone. And we did that every day. And we'd only been in country for a week. And it does not take long for habits to form. And they had went out there and stuck anti-tank mines, stacking them out in this kind of minefield. And it was just getting dark. So I was actually driving the first time that we were blown up, and we were just coming to a stop and eat our meal and stuff. And I literally, if we'd been moving, because those anti-tank mines have like a delay on them, like, I don't know, 0.4 seconds. So you're driving a tank over it, it's supposed to blow up in the center. We literally kind of stopped on it and blew the entire front left of the Humvee off, and oil's going in. I can't hear nothing. We had just actually lost Vinny Fraschetto. He's on my arm. So that's going through your head. Like, he was a machine gunner, and we had just lost him previously to an IED. And so I'm sitting there like banging my machine gunner's leg, like, "Are you okay? You okay?" And he's yelling back to me, "I'm okay," but I couldn't hear him. And he finally just kicks me, like, okay, he's good. And just a totally horrific, crazy experience to be blown up, and then get out and you're looking around and it's getting dark, and you're like, oh shit, you can see where the ground had been disturbed, and you're like, this is a minefield. And you're sitting in it, you've just been blown up, you're kind of delusional,
trying to
process, making sure, like,
because now you've got to respond appropriately too, because I freak out and probably go run over 3 more of them.
Well, we had other vehicles out there, so we're like, okay, peel off. We got to get out of here. So I had a really great Staff Sergeant Branch. Him and I were together pretty much my entire 4 years that I was in with him, and he definitely took the lead. He was a leader, and he dropped a chem light every time he took a step, and we walked out of there.
Wow.
To another vehicle. He was taking the lead. Like, I'll put the chem light down. So we knew to step where that chem light was placed. We ended up having to detonate our own vehicle and leave it, because we detonated so they can't take any assets out of it and stuff like that. But definitely interesting experience, right? To know that, like, hey, that small mistake of being predictable and stopping in the same little mesa every night to have your meal, became a predictable behavior that was able to be exploited and cause harm. And so luckily we stopped on that thing. I messed up my foot a little bit, but that was probably one of the biggest lessons, you could walk away from something like that. And everyone in that situation was okay, And so that, I think, experiences that I had were horrible, We took sniper fire. We hundreds and hundreds of hours of convoys, and we lost guys to IED attacks. We were in the city of Fallujah. We lost. This is where I learned to don't trust the media. We lost 8 females in one day. Same thing. We were getting meals delivered every day at the same time. We were stuck in the city of Fallujah. We had one hot meal a day, and they'd bring it with females because we were searching people at the mayor's compound there. So the females would search the females, and they couldn't stay out there. It was only men staying out there. It was 12 Marines and like 40 Iraqi police or whatever. And they'd send the girls home every day. And so a guy in a vehicle-borne IED, he just packed it full of bombs. He drove into the side of the truck. They brought us back into Camp Fallujah that night and see on the news, like CNN, and that's what maybe the military's released them. I don't know. But they say, 2 dead and 6 missing or whatever. I'm like, no, we yanked them out of the fiery truck. Really? We know how many, we know who it was, too. There's protocols on how you release that information and whatnot, but next day it's 4 dead, 4 missing, and I think some of it's, the American public don't want to hear the 8 females, especially the females. In those days, this was before a lot of the jobs like artillery are now open to females. It was not open in those days. It was the don't ask, don't tell days and all that stuff, and I think that they didn't want to publish that. And I don't know all the driving factors, but you just look at those experiences and you're like, yes, it formed me who I am today. But I've had to be very intentional to be able to talk about these things in a very kind of nonchalant way.
Because I've got 100 follow-up questions, but one of the things I think is the most remarkable and the most admirable is your ability, and people like you, to experience those things like that and still have this belief that love heals all wounds. Walk me through that. And I know that's an enormous question, but how in the world do you experience that? The darkest parts of humanity, and then have tattooed on your arms that love heals all wounds, and come back with this this approach to life where you want to make people better and inspire people and do good in the world. I would love to get into your mind and understand.
It's not like you look at it and you strip all the politics and the weapons of mass destruction. You strip all that aside.
Yeah.
And when you're in the Marine Corps, especially, we're very cultish. You're not fighting. When you're in a firefight, you're literally not fighting for America. You're not fighting for the war on terror. It's that dude next to you. It's that tribe. And you're even that instance when we got blown up and Staff Sergeant Branch walked out of there, slightly inappropriate, but before he walked out of there, he draws a big male anatomy part in the sand and says, "Miss me, you effers," right? And we walked out of there. And it's English. They probably couldn't read it, but he left.
Got it.
He left the message, right? He anatomically drew it correct. But, it's experiences like that. That was a laughing moment after a really bad night, right?
So it's finish your thoughts.
Yeah, and so, it's those people, and it's literally love heals all wounds. We can walk away, and Staff Sergeant Branch and I every September 13th that comes up on the Facebook, and we've got photos of this event and whatever. And he's got actually a piece of our Humvee hood hanging in his garage out in North Carolina, and we still talk. And we if I needed to reflect, I could go get help. But I have these brothers that we experienced that together. Nobody else experienced that. nobody else knows what that is like to have that moment of terror. And so that's been one of the most amazing things about something like Facebook. We've all stuck together. We all still regularly talk. Not as much as we want to, but if I needed to, and we all are able to laugh those times off at points.
Is that almost because like like people say, you look in any emergency and like look for the people running in, see, I mean, I've experienced, similar moments of that, like in the fire department. It's like these tragic, terrible events, but then also there's these, I don't know how to explain it, but the best sides of humans come out then too.
Yeah.
Like the worst sides do, but so do the best sides. But I wonder, it's just interesting to consider that of like, because you would think that, again, people experience stuff like that and you come back all hardened and bitter and, and that's where, again, I think your story is so, I'm so fascinated with your story because you've got example after example after example after example of times in your life when you could have said, okay, that's it. Here goes my, my emotional armor.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be, and yet there's been, and I don't know if maybe it's because you've seen the good side of humans when those things happen too, or, whatever, but I just think it's so cool.
I think you take the time like to be intentional and reflect. Like there's a lot of mixed emotions, I think, coming out of war in the Marine Corps. And I look at like the way that I've processed intentionally and thought about things. And I, maybe a couple of years ago, I had this revelation, maybe even through the COVID stuff. And I'm like, if I was a 30-year-old dude and you had a bunch of these people come into my street and tell me I couldn't go out past dark. I mean, we dropped 100,000 20-year-olds into Iraq. And so like, it's the worst parts of humanity, but I'm not going to say that if you dropped 100,000 20-year-olds in the city streets of Durango, which 17,000 people is about the size of Fallujah, that I wouldn't be out there putting a roadside bomb too, right? I don't know. Like,
ooh, interesting. So it's maybe it's forced a perspective of you to consider, I don't know, like there's other sides or there's like the humanity experience of it. That's fascinating.
I think a lot of us have reflected on that and
like at least even understanding, at least even recognizing and understanding some of the response might be the way you might respond to. And that's one of the things the more I talk to people, the more I travel, the more I, interact with people different than me or whatever, the more I'm reminded that we're really the same.
Yeah, like people of all walks of life. Yeah.
Right.
There was a time the manager that hired me into Cisco, he's part of the like connected black professionals. He's an African American, grew up in the South. He played college basketball at VMI. Really unique, cool individual. And there was a time we had about 16 people on our team, and I was the team lead and he was the manager. And I looked in the directory, and for the first time it clicked to me. I said, holy cow, I'm the only white dude on the team. We had the most diverse team at Cisco. And there's a lot of bad press right now about DEI, right? But diversity, if you can do the job and bring people from all walks of life together, you're going to get different ideas. You're going to get different thoughts. And for the first time in my life, honestly, at Cisco, in that role, was the first time I never had somebody talking about politics. Or we all come from these crazy walks of life. I worked with a guy, we're still really close friends, this guy Yao. He came here from China to work for Cisco, and he jokes. We'd be like, hey, what brought you to America? He'd be like, I wanted to have more than 2 kids. And he would crack these jokes, but I learned from him. He was blessed and grew up in the city, but if you grew up in the countryside, if you're like from Delta, Colorado or something of China, you don't have citizenship. You have to pay to get like your birth certificate and your hospital records and all that stuff.
No.
So there's people out who live in rural China who could never come to Disneyland because it would cost them like $20,000.
Crazy.
You learn these experiences, and if you can strip the politics and all the
noise,
partisan, you really can find some unique perspectives from people from India and China and Costa Rica. We had a team in Costa Rica, and I learned to really just admire all these different perspectives on walks of life.
I love that. I share that in such a huge way. Like I'm to the point now where I'm legitimately fascinated with other cultures and other perspectives. And, you know, you boil it all down, we're all just human. You know, like people want to be with their family, be happy, be fed, you know, exercise, like whatever. But like all at the core, we're all so much more alike than we are different. And I just think that's so, again, it speaks to your character and your mindset, but I just think that's so fascinating that you would arrive at these types of conclusions given your background. I love it. I
think that's why I'm really drawn to it. I was so pumped to come on and be on a podcast. I love long-form conversation podcasts. Love Lex Friedman's, Joe Rogan, all these guys that talk to people that they may not agree with. Yeah. But I find that sometimes I can be persuaded, or I persuade others through conversation. And we don't have to get along, or we don't have to like agree on something. And we can high five at the end of the day and say, I think your theory is flawed, but at the same time, you open up your mind to different ways of thinking, or different strategies, or different walks of life, or whatever.
Right.
And I've recently done this huge dive into diet, and I know, like, as an ultra runner, you probably have as well. And I did carnivore in January, and then I found out, maybe I want to do more ancestral, but. A good friend of mine, Cameron Shane, he's a black belt. He does mobility stuff. He's out of Montana Whitefish. He is a really good podcast. He's talking about food, and it's crazy. You have vegans and you have carnivores, but there's people in Antarctica that have strictly eaten meat, and there's people in the jungles of Brazil that strictly vegetables and fruits and stuff. And the human body can adapt, and there's I know you see it. There's people who are cultish vegan, people who are cultish carnivore. It's like the human body can adapt to a lot of different things, and I don't think there's a right and a wrong in every situation. And that's why I hate there's a right and a left. And I think too many people don't form their own opinions and don't have these conversations. Yeah. I can be very radical right in certain things, and I can be very radical left in certain things, and that's okay.
Right. Well, no, that's why I love it too. And one thing, a goal of mine is to, because I have yet, you know, my concept is people that inspire me. So I have yet to have somebody on that like I actually disagree with, but I would love to learn that skill, like in a podcast setting. Yeah. But I have it, you know, in private settings all the time. I'll have, you know, dialogue with people, and I think that's where there's been so much value in these long form podcast conversations, is because, first of all, they're one-on-one, they're non-distracted. Like, when's the last time you sat and talked to somebody like this without checking your cell phone, you know, for over an hour? It never happens. I'm lucky enough I get to do it, you know, a couple times a week because it's great. But I think that's what maybe we're missing now, where, you know, we're consuming information in bite-sized pieces, and we're getting in the headlines, or, you know, we've got all this divisive like media stuff and whatever. People forget that there's nuance.
Right.
Gray area. It's like, well, yeah, but, you know, or this is true, or, you know, like these complexities to life and perspectives. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. You know, it's like there is gray area. You know, like I just love the
there's unknown.
Like, I maybe would do that too. You know, like we have to at least consider it. It's like. And one of the things I've loved about my relationship with my wife has evolved and strengthened so much recently. And we were just trying to unpack a conflict that we were having with a third party. And I was able to say, well, we need to at least consider that we're the problem. Right. Like, let's at least think that through. Let's at least entertain that and talk. And what a healthy way to like actually sit, talk stuff through, like what are we doing? How are we contributing to this tension, or, you know, whatever's gone on? And it was so freeing. Like, you know, you think that it's, I don't know, like it seems counter. It's the discipline equals freedom kind of it. You know, it's like, you've got to do these things that way so that you have the freedom the other way. It's so hard to look introspectively and say, maybe I'm the problem, or maybe I'm the jerk here.
When you're crafting an argument, and you know, like religious people call it like apologetics. You can't craft your argument unless you really truly understand the other person's argument. So like when you look at a conflict like between your wife or between a third party, and you say, could I be wrong? And you analyze the ways that in which you could have been wrong, and you can deduce, no, I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Then you're able to better articulate that. And you know the one nagging thing, as we've talked, that when you asked me, how did you have the trust, right, in these people, these mentors and stuff? And I'm thinking about people that I've been engaging with recently, like Cameron Shane, this mobility guy. And I think part of it, based on the conversation we're having now, is they can articulately persuade and convey reasons why you should do something. Like I had Jim DeBell tell me, you should do this Marine Corps thing. You'll be able to travel to Iraq and back. You'll be able to get college funds to advance. And you kind of lost right now. And he told me, so you're going to meet people, and it was absolutely true. You're going to, for the first time in your life, going to meet true friends. And he says, you know, and I use this line all the time. You know your true friends, or you know they're your tribe 2 times, and that's moving day. Everybody disappears on moving day, and I stand by that. And when you need to hide a body, and he says that's who you're gonna meet when you join the Marine Corps. And I was like, I assimilate to that now.
Yeah,
like you're gonna meet these people. That was a persuasive argument. It vibed with me as a 19-year-old kid
because it was thought through.
Yeah,
because it wasn't just like a blind argument. It was articulated and it was intentional. Like it was thought. There was, and that's probably what you've been able to pick up on. Is like, okay, this.
Yeah, I think when I call it blind luck, people were able to come to me and say, Nick, you should do this because of this, and they could clearly articulate it in a way that it made sense to me, even though I couldn't see the vision. And then I said, well, I'll trust you. And that sometimes we see cults and all sorts of crazy stuff, mid-level marketing or whatever. People fall for lots of crazy stuff. In what I do in cybersecurity, people fall and are naive and gullible. The human element is how the largest breaches in the world happen.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure.
So I think that if you can articulate something well, you'll do well in life. But on the flip side, I think that people need to not read the headlines, right, on social media, and people need to be able to look at an articulated argument and deduce it down and say, what are the facts?
Right. Yeah, really think it through. It's fascinating. So one of the things I'm curious about too, by every definition, you're successful. Like, this amazing career, you've got your health, you've got your family, you've got your fitness, you've got your house. I mean, all these things, like you lined it up. Yet you still are purposefully doing these hard things. I remember a while back, and I'm trying to remember how long ago it was, but I was watching on social media, you were building a cold plunge.
Yeah, I built one.
You built the pump and the cool, like it was crazy for me to like watch that happen. And then you ended up, you invited people to
every Sunday. Yeah, we do grill and chill every Sunday. So, and sometimes we do grill chill. I have jiu-jitsu mats in the house, and we'll say, we want to work on a certain concept or whatever, and we'll drill. And then we get in the ice bath, and then
which is chill.
Yeah, and it's chill, and then we grill, and I buy meat for everybody, carnivore only. If someone wants to bring a side, they bring a side. It's kind of like my gift to my jiu-jitsu family. It's a fun time. I had Brooke, my massage therapist that I go to. She came recently and gave out free massages, and then started booking business. Right, like she'd come to the house and met people. It was just a sense of community. It's super fun. But it really goes, the cold plunge thing I did, I was in Costa Rica training jiu-jitsu, done a couple seminars under a guy named Sanjay Hibero. He's a 9-time world champion, phenomenal guy. And I've learned a lot, but we did a cold plunge there. And I was, she'd be a great guest on your podcast if you ever had her, but there's a girl, I call her Doc Jits, Dr. Megan Jimenez, she's an orthopedic surgeon. Dropped everything and joined the Army to be an orthopedic surgeon as well. Like, we really vibed when we were in Costa Rica, but she was able to, we did the cold plunge and my shoulders were real sore. I was like, I don't know if I can train tomorrow. Like, I've been worked over here. Did the cold plunge and I was able to train the next day. I was like, wow, what an amazing tool for inflammation. And then, she was able to articulate to me, like, all these benefits of cold plunge from, doing something hard every day. And it really starts I do it every day, 6 a.m. I'm in the cold plunge. And then I'm sitting there, like, I have a kind of a mesh chair at my desk. I work from home. And I kind of let my body naturally warm up. And I start my day doing emails naked at my desk, warming back up, and I start my
Zoom calls before.
Exactly. I turn the WebEx camera off, but that's how I start my day, and I find that I have more motivation and drive, and then there's all these benefits to cold plunge. You can go on Huberman podcasts and listen for hours about all of this stuff, but I found it really is good for inflammation. But it drives me. If the days that I don't cold plunge, I am slower, I'm not as effective, and it just doesn't give me that early morning dopamine.
It's so cool. Well, and that's what I think is interesting, and I want to hear a little bit more about, sort of just your mindset behind it all, because I see this continued growth. You're by the way, you are old.
40, yeah.
Cool. No, but you're 40. You've had this long life of hard experiences and growth and success and all of these things. Yet here you are at 40, still pursuing improvement in jiu-jitsu and still doing the cold plunge and still doing these things. I'm just kind of curious your mindset or that intention of why. Like you don't feel like you've done enough. There's still that like forward momentum, and I'm fascinated by it.
I'm not perfect by any means, and I've done great things and I've done stuff, but when you talked about like when you launched your own business and when you had less going or less maybe socialization or whatever, I get in a rut if I'm not striving and going full send. At work they call me full send. We have t-shirts that say full send. I do a little firewall video series called Full Send.
I need a full send t-shirt.
I will get you one.
I tend to be a full sender.
Yeah, and so that's how, and I'm constantly saying full send. We just got to go full send. And I just go. When I'm not go, like there's ebbs and flows in cybersecurity and what I do. There some weeks I'm less busy. I don't have a bunch of presentations to prep and whatnot. Those are my least effective weeks. Personally, professionally, anything. My calendar, I've found, needs to be full, and if it ain't full, I'm going to fill it. Yeah, I'm going to make time. There's 10 a.m. jiu-jitsu. If my calendar's not full, I'm going to be at 10 a.m. class. I'll be at the 6 a.m. class and stuff like that. And then the other thing that I've really thought about turning 40, but also just like my daughter and I are so close. Like, I've realized...
How old's your daughter?
She's 5.
Awesome.
And so the two boys, I mean, we're close, but not that close. And I've realized, like, I am this girl's best friend. It would wreck her world if something happened to me. And you look at cancer, and you look at all this other stuff, and I just look at two things. Is I want to live and be as healthy and positive and successful for my daughter as I can, and the boys. But just to be able to know that she's 5 years old, and I want to be at that wedding and all of that stuff. So I've made some drastic, like you said you stopped drinking. I've stopped drinking. I train more. The cold plunge, the sauna, I just did a 7-day fast about a month ago.
You did a 7-day fast?
I did a 7-day fast, and one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life, but it was super rewarding. But I'd read some study, and we're putting this, on the record, but something around 1 7-day fast in a lifetime reduces your lifetime chance of cancer by 70% or something. And if it was 20%, I would have done it.
Yeah.
But and don't quote me on that. It might have been 68% or something. And most statistics are made up on the fly, right? But that was the number
80% of statistics are made up.
Yeah. I was looking at that statistic, and I said, I can do a 7-day fast.
Did you work?
It's like that.
Did you take off?
I did work.
Normal?
We had, so at Cisco, we have these day for me's that they randomly do. They started it during COVID, but it's just like a random day off, like once a quarter or whatever. So we had one that was like landing on Wednesday. It was actually for Juneteenth. And I had just been traveling. I was in Salt Lake City, and I knew I had a pretty mellow week that week. And I had that day off. So I was like, you know what? So I had my last meal Thursday night in Salt Lake City. We were having a big steak dinner. And then I flew back Friday. I knew I would be traveling and consuming. I don't normally eat a bunch when I'm actually traveling. Typically, like grab a Red Bull or something. And I don't eat well when I'm traveling. So I was like, you know what? I'll just start my fast. So I hit Friday. I was in the weekend, so the toughest day was day 3 for me, and that was like Sunday, so I wasn't working. And then coming to Monday, I was working, but not feeling great. But by the time I got to day 7, this is what I was telling my business partner at work. I said, I could have done another 3-4 days.
Really?
But I didn't want to. Like, it was like, I could have. You get to a point, it's kind of like running.
Were you working at
when you break through a threshold,
right?
You know? And you feel like, oh,
now I could keep going.
The first 3 miles for me running are miserable. And then when I get to like 4, 5, and 6, I feel like I could go all day.
Right.
And that's how I felt.
Did you exercise while you're fasting?
I did. I did some jiu-jitsu. I was on the days that I was feeling well, and I did electrolytes, LMNT, electrolytes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I lost some weight, felt good, like all the stuff that they say, it's a phenomenal experience.
I've never had the courage to do it. When I first started, I watched a show, it's with Liam Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Limitless.
Yeah.
And yeah, the studies of like when you fast, it kills your cells, but what it also kills are those zombie cells, which are what eventually turns into cancer.
Yeah.
And if you fast long enough, but you have to, I don't think you get any benefit until day 3, if I remember right. Again,
and
don't quote me.
At about day 3, they say you start to see those benefits, and there's varying degrees of science between 3 and 7 days how much benefit you get. But I was like, you know what? There's a one study out there that says 7 days. I'm going to do it. And then, I will probably do a 7-day fast maybe once every 5 years. I did it a month after I turned 40, so maybe 45, maybe 50. And I'll probably do a 3-day fast at least annually just because it was a good experience. I would encourage anybody who's into health and fitness and doing hard shit to do a 3-day fast and see the experience.
Gosh dang it, I got to do it at some point. It's one of those things that's been on it's like the one thing yet, with this whole journey that I haven't been like, all right, I'm ready to do it, because I eat like a fiend. And it might be because I run so much, but like I literally eat 4 meals a day, 5 meals a day. Like,
you have to replace those calories. And so that's where I was like, the longevity portion of it, I just thought it was worth.
No,
if only for the experience.
Yeah, so, right. Just to say we did.
so the kind of off your question, like the longevity thing became a thing, but the second thing that continues to motivate me to push myself every day is legacy stuff. Like, I've done a lot of great stuff, but if I walk out of here and get hit by a truck, what do I leave behind other than a tribe and friends who that will slowly filter away? And I look back at like my dad who adopted me. I dropped, he sold his wind energy business, General Electric. But I look at the things that he's done. He has a patent. That's something I've been through Cisco. I can file patents, and I've been working on trying to file a patent. And the other thing is I want to write a book. Before we were filming, I kind of brought it up. There's 2 routes I want to do. I have an interesting life, and I could do a book about life or leadership or intentional hard stuff. But the other thing, there's some very technical stuff to do with like traffic encryption and decryption. That's really kind of one of my specialties in what I do that I'd like to write. And solely for the fact that the kids can go to a bookshelf one day and pull this thing, and it could be on TLS, decryption, right? And they don't know. I mean, this is Chinese stuff.
Right.
But I have that sense of pride and that legacy that my dad has a patent and he did this, that I want to be able to leave that behind. The book, in my opinion, and even these podcasts that you're doing, can transcend generations,
live forever,
and be legacy, and sit on that bookshelf that your great-grandkids, your great-great-great-great-grandkids, and in 100 years or whatever happens to the universe, Elon Musk thinks we're going to Mars, it'll sit up there in Mars and live past what I am today, even if it's only for my family or if it's for tech nerds for the next 30 years. That's something that would transcend this lifetime. And so those are the things that motivate me to continue to push, continue to study, be on the forefront of technology. We're huge into AI right now. And, obviously, like technology, you're constantly learning to keep up. And so that's the things that make me wake up every day, want to get in the cold plunge, set aside time to read every day, set aside study time. Even though I am in the pinnacle, I'm a well-respected person in the cybersecurity community. I work with the largest enterprises in this country. The largest. Just think about who made your car. Think about who you bank with on a national level. Those are the conversations we're in around cybersecurity, and I still want to drive. I still want to. If I got hit by a truck tomorrow, someone else is going to do that job at Cisco. But
Right.
They say that, right? Like, your job can replace you within hours, right? Like, you're replaceable. But I want to leave something behind that transcends that.
I love that. I love it. And you're doing it. And that's what I just to kind of wrap up, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it, because I think, we're so alike in that. It's why I'm trying to have this Inspire by Example movement. And, I have these, we're both kind of, optimists at a fault, and whether it's the Nic tornado or Zen Ben or whatever, but, I have these grand visions of someday thousands of people walking around in Inspire by Example shirts and just being a little bit better and making the world a little bit of a better place. It's like kind of the pay it forward moment for me of like trying to do that. And I just love that you've got that, again, intentionality about leaving a legacy, and the fact that the impact you have on the world matters, and whether it's one life or 100 or 10,000, it matters. And I just think if more people understood how impactful that stuff is, we'd be more intentional.
There's that Navy SEAL, and I can never remember his name, but he did that college commencement speech, right? And you'll see it on YouTube clips and stuff, but they don't play the whole thing. I recently watched the whole thing, and it talks about make your bed every day, right?
Love it.
But he gets to that. He's actually talking to this group of students, and he says, there's, 4,000 of you or whatever. He says, if you guys impact 5 lives in your lifetime, like truly impact 5 lives, and those people impact 5 lives,
right?
And those people impact 5 lives. I can't remember how many years or decades or something he equated. Really good video to watch. But he basically did the math live on stage. You will impact the entire population of the globe if everybody commits to make a positive impact to 5 people.
Oh, I love it.
It was pretty powerful.
I love that. Yeah. Nic, thank you so much for so many reasons. One, thank you for driving up from Farmington. Thank you for giving me some of your time. When you had said that you had worn out your Inspire by Example shirt, I used that to bribe you. Like, hey,
No.
So I have another one for you. Because I want you to know you are very sincerely inspiring by example. And that's the larger thank you that I have for you, is thank you for living the life that you're living. Thank you for making the impact that you're making. Thanks for leaving the legacy that you're leaving. I need you to know that it matters, and it's actually impacting people. And if enough of us do this, we can change the world. We can actually make the world such a better place. And for somebody like you, especially like we had talked about with the story that you have, the experiences that you've had, to still have the mindset you have, I admire it.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate it. I will live the Inspire by Example, and I'm always open to any people that your podcast reaches. Like, if those mentorship opportunities, someone wants to reach out and say, hey, I'm a veteran and I'm looking to go to cybersecurity or whatever, I'm always open to those as well. So.
Love it. And you owe me a t-shirt, okay?
I'll bring you one. I sure will.
Thanks a ton, Nic.
Thank you.